Welcome back to the deep dive. It seems like marketing is always changing so fast these
It
days.
really
So
does.
today we're going to try to break down this concept that really shook things up
Yeah.
back in 2010,
hmm
growth hacking.
Growth hacking, yeah.
And you sent us some really fascinating excerpts from the book Growth Hacker Marketing by
Yes.
Ryan Holiday.
The OG text.
I'm excited to kind of dive into this with you. It's a concept that's still making waves,
Oh, for sure.
even today.
What's so interesting about Holiday's perspective is that he doesn't come from some tech startup bubble.
Right.
This guy was the director of marketing at American Apparel,
Oh, yeah.
a company that definitely knew how to grab attention,
Yeah.
to put it mildly.
For sure. It was not your average marketing playbook.
No.
But Holiday didn't just stick with what he knew. He saw the potential in this scrappy, data-driven approach
Yeah.
that was kind of emerging.
hmm
And he really brought it kind of into the mainstream.
Exactly. And yeah, this growth hacking idea,
Yeah.
it wasn't just some theoretical framework.
Right.
It was born out of necessity.
Okay.
Startups, especially in the tech world,
Yeah?
they didn't have those massive budgets
Yeah.
or established brand recognition. They
Right.
had to find ways to grow
Yeah.
and fast.
And fast.
So they had to be resourceful
Yeah.
to experiment
Mhm.
and, most importantly, to measure everything they did.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
If you had to explain growth hacking to someone who's never heard of it,
Yeah.
how would you sum it up?
Okay.
What's the core concept here?
Well, Holiday uses a great analogy in the book
Okay.
that I think really captures it.
Okay.
He compares traditional marketing
Mm-hmm.
to a Hollywood blockbuster movie.
Okay.
You pour tons of money into this big launch, hoping for instant success.
Right.
But more often than not, it falls flat.
Yeah.
Like some of those big budget movies that get hyped up for months and then just flop.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes all that glitz and glamour, it doesn't translate into results.
Right.
So where does growth hacking fit in?
Think of it more like the Blair Witch Project of marketing.
Okay.
Low budget,
Yeah.
innovative, and completely focused on rapid,
Yeah.
measurable growth.
So instead of betting everything on one big moment,
Mhm.
growth hacking is about.
It's about building a system.
Oh, okay.
A system for sustainable growth
Mm-hmm.
that leverages things like email, online ads, blogs, and social media.
Right.
Basically any channel that allows you to quickly reach your target audience.
Yeah.
And everything is testable,
Okay.
trackable, and scalable.
It almost feels like a scientific approach to marketing.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like growth hacking
Okay.
is just as much about product development as it
Yeah.
is about promotion, right?
Absolutely.
That's one thing that really jumped out at me from the book.
Yeah. It all starts with what Holiday calls product market fit,
Product market fit.
or PMF.
Okay.
You have to make sure you're building something
Mm-hmm.
that people actually want and need.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about slapping together a product,
Right.
hoping for the best.
So you're saying that growth hackers are involved from the very beginning,
Exactly.
even before a product is launched.
They're obsessed with understanding their target audience
Right.
and ensuring that the product they're building solves a real problem.
Okay.
Think about Airbnb.
Okay.
They started as a way to rent out air mattresses
Mm-hmm.
on people's floors,
Wow.
but they were constantly gathering feedback,
Yeah.
iterating,
Okay.
pivoting based on what their users were telling them.
Mm.
That's how they evolved into the global platform
Oh, yeah.
they are today.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
There's also Instagram,
Yes.
which originally started as Bourbon,
Right.
a location-based social network.
That's right.
But the founders noticed that people were mainly using it to share photos, so they doubled down on that feature and completely retooled the app, and boom,
Boom.
they had a viral hit on their hands.
Exactly. And it's not just tech startups either.
Right?
Even a company like Amazon utilizes this growth hacking mindset.
Really?
They have a practice where product managers have to write a future press release
Okay.
before they even start developing a new product.
Wait, a press release before the product even exists?
It forces them to articulate what's unique and valuable about the product,
yeah.
who it's for,
Yeah.
and why it matters.
Okay.
It's a brilliant way to ensure that they're building something
Yeah.
that people will actually be excited about.
So it's not just about coming up with a cool idea.
No.
It's about making sure that idea resonates
Yes.
with a specific audience
Mm-hmm.
and fulfills a real need.
A need, yeah.
That's a powerful lesson for anyone,
It is.
not just marketers.
Right.
This really makes me think about my own work.
Yeah.
Are we truly focused on building products, Yeah.
that people want.
Yeah.
Are we using the right tools to gather feedback and iterate based on data?
Yeah.
I think we could all learn a thing or two from growth hackers
I think so too.
about being more user-centric.
I think that's a really important takeaway.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype of a new idea,
Right.
but if it doesn't solve a real problem
Right.
for a specific group of people,
Yeah.
it's ultimately going to fail.
It is going to fail.
And that's where this whole going viral concept comes in.
Okay.
Everyone wants to create the next viral sensation.
Right.
But is it really just luck?
Yeah. Is it just luck?
Or is there a method to the madness?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people assume that virality is just a matter of chance,
Right?
but Holiday argues that it's actually a lot more strategic than that.
Right. Going viral isn't just about slapping a share button on something
Yeah.
and hoping for the best.
Right.
It's about understanding the psychology of sharing.
It's about tapping into the emotions and motivations that drive people to spread ideas.
So it's not just about the product itself. It's about how you present it.
Yes.
And how you encourage people to share it with their networks.
Exactly. It's about making it easy and rewarding for people to share your message. Think about it. Every time someone shares something online,
Yeah,
they're essentially putting their reputation on the line.
that's true.
They're saying to their friends and followers, hey, I think this is worth checking out.
Right.
So you have to make it worth their while.
In the book, Holiday talks about the Holstein Manifesto.
Yes.
It's this simple, inspiring document about living with passion that unexpectedly went viral.
Yeah.
And it had all the right ingredients.
Yeah.
It targeted a specific audience. It resonated emotionally.
Yeah.
And it was easy to share.
Exactly.
I see.
And think about companies like Groupon and Living Social.
Okay.
They built virality right into their business model. They rewarded users for referring their friends,
Okay.
which created this self-perpetuating growth loop.
So you're saying they incentivized sharing, basically?
They incentivize sharing, yeah.
Okay, interesting. And Dropbox, too.
Yes.
They saw a massive spike in signups after they introduced their referral program.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a simple incentive
I know, it's amazing.
can have such a huge impact. It really makes you wonder why companies spend so much money on these expensive ad campaigns when something like a referral program can be so much more effective.
Referrals are powerful because they come with built-in trust.
Right.
People are much more likely to try something if it's recommended by a friend or family member.
Right.
It's the ultimate social proof.
So we've talked about the importance of building a product people love, getting people talking about it.
Yeah.
But what happens after that initial buzz?
That's where things get really interesting.
Oh.
Because growth hacking isn't a one-time event.
Okay.
It's about constantly tracking data,
Right.
tweaking, and improving your approach over time.
So you're always like iterating, always.
Always iterating.
Okay.
It's about making sure those new users stick around,
Yeah.
not just sign up and disappear.
So in other words, it's about retention.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, it's often more cost-effective to keep existing customers happy
Right.
than to constantly chase new ones.
That's true.
A lot of companies make the mistake of
Yeah.
focusing all their energy on acquisition
Okay.
and neglecting the customers they already have.
It's like that saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Exactly.
So how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
How do you make sure people stick around
Yeah.
once they've signed up?
Well, a lot of it comes down to understanding user behavior
Okay.
and using data to make informed decisions. For example, Twitter realized that users who followed at least 5 to 10 accounts were much more likely to stay engaged on the platform.
Oh, that's interesting. So what did they do?
They redesigned their onboarding process to encourage that behavior.
Okay.
They made it easier for new users
Yeah.
to find and follow people they're interested in.
Yeah, okay.
It's a subtle change,
Yeah.
but it had a huge impact on their retention rates.
Oh, that's really clever. Seems like a lot of growth hacking is about paying attention to those little details that can make a big difference.
Huge difference.
And I remember Holiday talks about his own experience with this in the book.
Oh, yeah.
He mentions getting a personal phone call from the team at Dogvikai
Mm,
while signing up for their service.
right.
That small gesture turned him
Yeah.
from a casual browser into an active user.
It's a great example of how even a simple act of personalization
Yeah.
can make a big impact.
Yeah.
And Dropbox does something similar.
Okay.
They reward users for taking a tour of their features
Okay.
or providing feedback.
Okay.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
It keeps users engaged. and it gives the company valuable insights into how they can improve their product.
And that's something I think a lot of businesses miss.
I agree.
They're so focused on getting people to sign up or make a purchase that they forget about the importance of building relationships and creating a positive user experience.
Growth hacking isn't just about tricks and tactics. It's about creating a sustainable system for growth that's built on a foundation of trust and value.
So it's not just about growth for growth's sake.
No.
It's about growing in a way that's sustainable, ethical, and beneficial for both the business and its customers.
Exactly. And, to really illustrate this point, I think it'd be helpful to dive into a real-world case study. Holiday shares his experience of launching Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Chef.
The 4-Hour Chef.
Which faced a huge challenge right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that. What was it? Something about major retailers refusing to carry the book.
Exactly. So Holiday had to get creative and apply these growth hacking principles to launch a book that wasn't even available in major bookstores.
Wow. Okay, so what did he do?
He used data from reader surveys to make sure the book was resonating with the target audience. And he focused on targeted outreach to bloggers with large, relevant followings.
So leverage those existing communities to get the word out.
Exactly.
That's smart.
And he did something really unconventional. He partnered with BitTorrent to offer a free bundle of content related to the book.
Wow.
Which reached millions of people. It was a try before you buy approach. That really paid off.
And the results were impressive, right?
They were.
The book became a bestseller despite not being available in major bookstores.
It did.
Talk about a disruption to the traditional publishing industry.
Exactly. It really proved that growth hacking can work in any industry. Even ones that are considered old school. Like publishing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
We've talked about the importance of product market fit, the psychology of going viral, and the need for ongoing optimization and retention. It's clear that growth hacking is more than just a buzzword.
It is.
It's a fundamentally different way of thinking about marketing.
It is.
But what does this all mean for our listener? How can they apply these principles in their own work?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the first step is to really embrace this mindset shift.
So it's not just about learning a set of tactics. It's about adopting a new way of thinking.
Exactly. It's about being data-driven, iterative, and relentlessly focused on growth. And it's about being willing to experiment. To test. To constantly optimize. And to challenge the status quo.
I love that. Don't just accept the way things have always been done. Look for new and better ways to do things.
Exactly. And, it's not just about being a marketer. It's about being a growth hacker. It's about seeing the entire customer journey as an opportunity for growth. And breaking down those traditional silos between marketing, product development, and customer service.
I'm really struck by this idea that anyone can be a growth hacker. Regardless of their job title or industry.
Absolutely. You don't need a fancy marketing degree. Or a huge budget to be a growth hacker. You just need to be resourceful, creative, and data-driven. You need to be willing to experiment and learn from your mistakes.
And you need to be passionate about finding ways to grow your business in a sustainable and ethical way.
That's the key. Growth hacking isn't about taking shortcuts or using shady tactics. It's about building a business that's built to last, a business that people love and want to be a part of.
That's great.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to emphasize one more thing. Growth hacking is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what works for you and your business. It's about being willing to adapt and evolve as you go.
Got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about being agile and responsive to your market, your customers, and the data you're collecting.
Thinking back to that Amazon example, the future press release exercise, it seems like one of the biggest takeaways from growth hacking is this emphasis on being incredibly clear about the value you're offering.
Absolutely. If you can't articulate why your product or service matters, why should anyone else care?
Right.
It's about understanding your unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
And communicating it in a way that resonates with your target audience.
It's almost like you're reverse engineering the success you want to achieve. Yeah. You're starting with the end goal in mind.
Right.
Whether that's getting a certain number of users, driving sales, or building brand awareness, and then working backwards to figure out how to get there.
Exactly. It's about being strategic and intentional with every decision you make.
Right.
Growth hackers don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
They have a clear plan. They track their progress. And they make adjustments along the way based on the data they're collecting.
It sounds like data is really the lifeblood of growth hacking.
It is.
It's what informs every decision and allows you to kind of make those course corrections along the way.
Got it. Growth hackers are obsessed with data. They track everything. Website traffic, conversion rates, social media engagement, email open rates. You name it. And they use that data to make informed decisions about what's working and what's not.
That's something I think traditional marketers often struggle with. Sometimes it feels like they're making decisions based on gut feeling or what's always been done.
And that could be a recipe for disaster. In today's fast-paced digital world, you can't afford to be flying blind. You need to have your finger on the pulse of your data and be willing to make changes based on what it's telling you. Even if those changes mean abandoning a cherished idea or campaign that's just not performing.
You have to be willing to kill your darlings, as they say.
Sometimes, It can be tough. But it's essential for growth. You can't let your ego get in the way of making data-driven decisions.
It's interesting because it feels like this data-driven approach is almost counterintuitive to the way we've traditionally thought about marketing. You know, the old Mad Men era, big splashy campaigns and catchy slogans.
It's a completely different paradigm. Growth hacking is about being agile, iterative, and data-driven. It's about constantly testing and experimenting to find what works. It's not about guesswork. It's about using data to guide your decisions.
So let's say our listener is sold on this whole growth hacking thing. They're ready to ditch the old playbook and embrace this new mindset. Where do they even start? What's that first crucial step they need to take?
I'd say the first step is to put on your detective hat. And really get to know your target audience.
So become a customer whisperer.
Exactly. You need to understand their needs, their pain points, their motivations. Where do they hang out online? What kind of content do they consume? What are their goals and aspirations? Once you have a deep understanding of your audience, you can start thinking about how to reach them. In a meaningful and effective way.
It's like you said earlier. It all goes back to that product market fit. If you don't understand your audience, you can't build a product that solves their problems. And if you don't have a product that solves their problems, no amount of marketing is going to make a difference.
It's all connected. And, you know, this idea of really understanding your audience, it applies to so much more than just marketing. It can inform your product development, your customer service, even your overall business strategy.
It's about putting the customer at the center.
Exactly.
Of everything you do.
And when you do that, growth will naturally follow.
You know, one thing that really excites me about growth hacking is that it seems to be leveling the playing field.
For businesses of all sizes. In the past, it felt like only big corporations with massive budgets could afford to do effective marketing. But with growth hacking, it feels like anyone can compete.
I agree. The internet has created this incredible opportunity for small businesses and startups to reach a global audience without breaking the bank. And growth hacking is all about leveraging those digital tools and platforms to your advantage.
It's democratizing marketing in a way that we've never seen before.
And it's empowering a whole new generation of entrepreneurs and innovators.
So it's not just about growing a business. It's about changing the world.
I think it has the potential to do both. When you empower people to build successful businesses, you create jobs, you stimulate the economy, and you create opportunities for people to pursue their passions and make a difference in the world. That's a really inspiring thought.
It is.
You know, as we're talking about all these amazing possibilities of growth hacking, I can't help but wonder.
Yeah.
Are there any potential downsides?
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Okay.
Like any powerful tool,
Right.
growth hacking can be misused.
Okay.
It's important to remember that growth hacking is not about taking shortcuts
Right.
or using shady tactics.
Right.
It's about building a business that's built to last.
Yeah.
A business that people love and want to be a part of.
So it's not just about growth for growth's sake. It's about growing in a way that's sustainable, ethical, and beneficial for both the business and its customers.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest dangers is getting so caught up in chasing metrics and hitting those growth targets that you lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah.
Creating value for your customers.
It's about finding that balance between growth and integrity.
Right. You don't want to do anything that could damage your brand or your reputation in the long run.
Yeah.
Because trust is everything in business.
Yeah.
Once you lose that, it's very difficult to get it back.
It's like that saying, it takes years to build trust and only seconds to destroy it.
Exactly.
So how do you make sure you're using growth hacking in a way that's ethical and sustainable?
Well, I think it starts with being honest with yourself about your intentions.
Okay.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
What are your goals?
Yeah.
And are those goals aligned with your values?
It's about being clear about your purpose and making sure everything you do is in service of that purpose.
Exactly. And it's about being transparent with your customers.
Okay.
Don't try to trick them or manipulate them.
Right.
Be upfront about what you're doing and why you're doing it.
People can smell BS a mile away, especially online.
They can. And if they feel like you're not being genuine, they'll tune you out.
So authenticity is key.
It's more important than ever.
It really is. You know, it's really interesting to think about how growth hacking is changing the role of the marketer.
Yeah.
In the past, marketers were often seen as these creative types who came up with catchy slogans, designed beautiful ads.
Right.
But now it feels like they need to be a lot more data savvy and tech-minded.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
The modern marketer needs to be a hybrid, part creative, part analyst, part technologist.
Almost like a Swiss Army knife of marketing skills.
Exactly. They need to be comfortable with data, with technology, and with constantly learning and adapting. Because the digital landscape is constantly evolving. And what worked yesterday might not work today.
So it's not enough to just learn the ropes of growth hacking. You have to be committed to ongoing learning and development.
Absolutely. And you have to be willing to embrace change and experiment with new ideas.
Right, because the only constant in the world of marketing is change.
And speaking of change, I'm curious, do you see any other big shifts happening in the marketing landscape? What do you think the future of marketing holds?
That's a great question. And I think one of the biggest trends we're seeing is the rise of personalization.
Okay, so it's not enough to just reach your target audience.
Right.
You need to reach them on an individual level.
Exactly. Consumers are bombarded with so much information these days that they've become very good at tuning out anything that doesn't feel relevant to them.
It's like they have a built-in BS detector.
They do.
Yeah.
And that means marketers need to be a lot more sophisticated in their approach.
Okay.
We need to move beyond mass marketing and start thinking about how to create personalized experiences that resonate with each individual customer.
And that's where data comes in again, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Data is the key to personalization.
The more you know about your customers, the better you can tailor your messages and offers to their individual needs and preferences.
So it's about using data to build relationships, not just drive transactions.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, marketing is all about building relationships. It's about connecting with people on an emotional level and creating experiences that they'll remember and share with others.
It's about making people feel seen, heard, and understood.
And that's what will ultimately drive loyalty and long-term growth.
This has been an incredible conversation.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what growth hacking is and how it can be used to build successful businesses. But more importantly, I think I have a better grasp of this mindset shift that's necessary to really thrive in the digital age.
I'm glad to hear that. And, you know, one of the most important things I want to leave our listener with is this.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to try new things.
Yeah.
To break the rules.
Yeah.
To challenge the status quo.
It's about being a disruptor.
Yes.
An innovator, a game changer.
Exactly. Embrace that mindset, and you'll be well on your way to growth hacking success.
And remember, it's not just about the tactics and the tools.
Right.
It's about the mindset.
It is.
It's about being curious.
Yeah.
Being data-driven. And being relentlessly focused on growth.
Yeah.
But it's also about being ethical and sustainable in your approach.
It's about building a business that you can be proud of.
Yeah.
A business that makes a positive impact on the world.
So how can our listener take that first step?
Yeah.
What's one small action they can take today to start incorporating these growth hacking principles into their work?
I would say start by identifying one key metric that you want to improve. Maybe it's your website traffic, your email open rates, or your conversion rates.
Okay.
Then brainstorm a few small experiments you can run
to
try to move the needle on that metric.
So don't try to boil the ocean.
Right.
Start small, focus on one thing, and track your results.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative.
Right.
There are no rules in growth hacking.
Okay.
The only limit is your imagination.
And if one experiment doesn't work, try another one.
Right.
And another one. Keep iterating and refining your approach until you find what works.
That's the beauty of growth hacking.
Right.
It's all about experimentation and continuous improvement.
You know, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I keep thinking back to that analogy of growth hacking being like the Blair Witch Project of marketing.
Right.
It really captures that scrappy DIY spirit that's at the heart of this movement.
It does. And it reminds us that you don't need a huge budget or a fancy marketing agency to be successful.
Right.
You just need to be resourceful,
Yeah.
creative, and data-driven.
Okay.
You need to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty.
And you need to be passionate about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because passion is contagious.
Yeah.
When you're excited about your work, it shows.
Right.
And that excitement will rub off on your customers, your team, and everyone you interact with.
So find something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And then use growth hacking to share it with the world.
That's the recipe for success.
This has been another fantastic discussion.
It has been.
I feel like we've peeled back another layer of the growth hacking onion
Yeah.
and uncovered even more insights and practical advice. But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to encourage our listener to really think about how they can apply these principles in their own work. Don't just passively listen. Take action.
I agree. Don't let this information just sit in your head.
Right.
Put it into practice. Start experimenting.
Yeah.
Start tracking your results.
Yeah.
And start growing your business.
And remember, we're here to support you on your journey.
You are.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into growth hacking, I keep coming back to this idea that it's not just about marketing tactics.
It really is a whole business philosophy.
Exactly. It's about constantly seeking growth, being adaptable, and always putting the customer first.
And it's about using data to make smart decisions rather than relying on gut feelings or assumptions.
I think a lot of people might be intimidated by the technical aspects of growth hacking, all the talk about data and metrics and A/B testing.
Yeah, it can seem overwhelming at first, but it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right. There are so many tools and resources available now that make it easier than ever to track your data and analyze your results.
And you don't need to be a data scientist to get started. You can start with the basics and gradually learn more as you go.
One thing I really appreciate about Holliday's book is that he doesn't shy away from sharing his own failures and setbacks.
He's very open about the fact that he didn't always get it right.
Which I think is really refreshing, because it shows that growth hacking isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to experiment, to learn from your mistakes, and to keep iterating.
It's about embracing the journey and recognizing that growth is a continuous process, not a destination.
And that's a great reminder for all of us, no matter what field we're in or what goals we're pursuing.
We all have something to learn from this growth hacking mindset, this idea of constantly seeking ways to improve and grow.
I'm curious, have you seen any examples of companies using growth hacking for good, for social impact?
Absolutely. There are tons of organizations out there using these principles to raise awareness for important causes, mobilize communities, and drive positive change.
That's inspiring to hear. It's a reminder that growth hacking can be a force for good in the world, not just a way to make more money.
It's about using your skills and creativity to make a real difference.
Okay, so before we officially wrap up this deep dive into growth hacking, I want to give our listener one final actionable takeaway.
What's one thing they can do right now to start putting these principles into practice?
Exactly. What's that one small step they can take today to start hacking their way to success?
I would say think about what you want to achieve. What's your big, audacious goal?
So what's that thing you're aiming for that might seem a bit out of reach right now?
Yes, and then break that goal down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Hmm.
What's one tiny action you can take today to move you closer to that goal?
So it's about having that big vision, but then focusing on the small, achievable steps that will get you there.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to think outside the box, to try new things, and to get creative.
Because at the end of the day, growth hacking is all about challenging the status quo and finding new and innovative ways to achieve your goals.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover the next big marketing breakthrough.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of growth hacking. I feel like we've covered so much ground, from the foundational principles to real-world examples and practical tips.
I hope it's been valuable for our listener and that they've gained some insights they can apply to their own work.
If you're listening and want to go even deeper, we highly recommend checking out the full book, Growth Hacker Marketing by Ryan Holiday. It's packed with even more insights and case studies.
And remember, growth hacking is all about action. So don't just listen to this deep dive. Go out there and start experimenting.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of growth hacking. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.